The brain you're bringing to trading, if untrained, will sabotage your trading performance. The human mind has been developed in a very particular way to keep you alive and to keep you in a state of survival. And the truth is, as traders, we have to learn to transcend these survival states in order to stick to our trading plans to achieve consistent profitability. So what I want to do in this particular masterclass is go deeper into this concept and show you why the brain you're bringing to trading is sabotaging your performance, and show you exactly what you can do to fix it. And really, it's not that difficult. You just need to follow exactly what I'm going to share in this video. So let's get into it. Now, thousands of years ago, our ancestors were constantly faced with life-threatening situations. And really, death for our ancestors came in two forms. The first form was being attacked or eaten by a predator. That was one way to die thousands of years ago. A saber-toothed tiger or a bear coming and eating you. The other way was you not catching the prey or your dinner that night. So really, there are two fundamental fears and two fundamental distresses that are programmed and hardwired for human beings. The getting of the predator, the attack of the predator, and the missing out of the prey. And our brain, our survival response in our brain has been set up over thousands of years of development to combat these two distresses and these two forces. So, if you're a human being in the wild, well, rather our ancestors thousands of years ago, but what's also important to recognize is that this same hardwired response is programmed in each and every single one of us. Because human nature never gets rid of old things, it only builds new layers on top of. So this same hardwired response, which was necessary thousands of years ago, is within each and every single one of us. But the likelihood of this type of threat nowadays is different. And we have to learn to start to transcend this survival mechanism in order to stick to our trading plan, which is what I'm going to elaborate on. So let's imagine thousands of years ago, our ancestor was faced with a predator, a life-threatening threat in front of them. They, in that situation, so let's just do a threat so we don't have to sit through my drawing skills. Now, in that type of situation, our ancestor would take this event in front of them and they would perceive it in their mind as negative, as challenging, as bad, as life-threatening, as dangerous. And what would happen in their mind is they would label that event bad, and they would have what is called confirmation bias. Confirmation bias to accentuate how bad that event was, and to run the story in their mind about how dangerous and how life-threatening and how painful and how excruciating and how gory their death would be, as a way to get adrenaline and cortisol up. So this survival mechanism would increase adrenaline and cortisol to get into what is referred to as a fight or flight response. We've also got a freeze response, but a fight or flight response. Now, depending on the threat and depending on the perception in that moment, if the human perceived themselves strong enough to fight the threat, they would fight it. If they perceived themselves weaker than the threat, they would flight it. If they perceived that moving or doing anything in that situation would cause them more harm than good, they would freeze. So the fight, flight, or freeze response is a survival mechanism. It's a survival response, no matter which one it is. But my point is, in that situation, they would have what is referred to as confirmation bias to accentuate how negative that was, and disconfirmation bias on any of the benefits in that moment. They would be blocking out the benefits and the opportunities in that moment. So disconfirmation bias on any of the benefits. The mind was designed in that moment to exaggerate and accentuate as a survival response to get adrenaline and cortisol up, to get the human being primed to a fight or flight response. And the blood would leave the internal organs, it would go to the periphery of the body, the muscles, to prime them and to put them in that state where they were ready to go, ready to fight or flight. Okay? Now, the same in reverse. If an ancestor then saw a predator or dinner for the night, they would have the exact same response in reverse. They would take this event and they would start labeling the benefits in their mind. They would accentuate and exaggerate how good that event is through confirmation bias. And they would think about all the pleasure and the fillingness and how it would support their family and how it would take care of them. And what's happening in the mind is they're exaggerating how the benefit of the prey, again, as a way to get adrenaline and cortisol up to prime them for a fight or flight response so they could go and capture that prey, the dinner. But in that situation, the mind was set up in a way to block out any of the drawbacks in that moment, any of the threats in that moment, disconfirmation bias on the negatives, to block out anything that could run counter any of the risks in that moment, like the fact that this animal could turn around and eat you or something like that. So my point is that thousands of years ago, our ancestors had to develop this mechanism of confirmation bias, disconfirmation bias as a survival mechanism to get adrenaline and cortisol up to stimulate and activate what is referred to as the sympathetic autonomic system. Okay? Now, we are descendant of these ancestors, and these same mechanisms are hardwired within us. But this mechanism was developed to combat the fear of death in both ways, the getting of the predator or the losing of the prey. So we needed this thought process as a survival mechanism to keep us alive. Now, nowadays, if there's a car that's about to hit you, it's very important that you have this same response. And you know what? Depending on how many life-threatening situations you've been in, or in how many very close calls you've been in your life, whether a car accident or a fight or anything that you may have perceived as very, very threatening, you would have experienced this. You would have had that feeling of adrenaline pumping through your body. And you would have had that heightened sense of strength and agility. And just you feel your blood pumping a little bit. So everybody's probably experienced this, and this survival mechanism is still important. If a car's about to hit you or a train's about to hit you and you perceive that as a threat in that moment, that response is going to fire very quickly and you're going to get out the way most likely. You're going to have probably what people are going to label afterwards a ridiculous feat of nature, human nature, to get out of that threatening situation. So it's still necessary nowadays, but my point is, how often are you in a life-threatening situation for most people? If you're watching this YouTube, if you're focusing on your trading, if you've got good internet connection, chances are you've transcended a lot of the day-to-day life-threatening situations. Especially if you're sitting at the charts in your air-conditioned apartment using proper risk management. In that scenario, the life-threatening threats are almost zero. So in those situations, we have to learn to start to transcend this very survival mechanism. We have to rise above it. And there are very specific things you can do to do that, which I'm going to share with you in this video. Now, when we have a look at the actual physical makeup of the brain, and we do our best to draw a brain here, if you have a look at the neurons, the amygdala, typically for most people, which is the survival mechanism, is more heavily wired. And you have the prefrontal cortex, which for most people is not very heavily wired. Depends on how empowered you are, really, and how congruent you are with your mission and what you love to do. But typically, the amygdala is much more heavily wired, and it's going to fire first in most circumstances. Why? Because the amygdala has been more useful for our development and our survival throughout the years. When there's been a lot of life-threatening situations and we've had to develop and we've had to build the infrastructures we have in society nowadays, the amygdala, for the most part, through our development and evolution, was very, very important. So every human being tends to have a more heavily wired amygdala unless they work on also wiring their prefrontal cortex. Now, there's a great book by Dr. Steve Peters, called The Chimp Paradox. And he uses the analogy that the human is the prefrontal cortex and the amygdala is the chimp. And he says that the chimp is stronger than the human, and it's more reactive, and it's more emotional. You don't want to upset the chimp, because then it will take over and it'll take control. I like that analogy. It makes a lot of sense. It's no different with the amygdala. If you trigger the amygdala and it fires, and you don't have that level of self-governance because you haven't wired the prefrontal cortex, you haven't done the mindset work, then your amygdala is going to take over. So effectively, every single one of the videos, I think I've got about 210 on this YouTube channel by now, every single one of the things I post on my Instagram, every single one of the videos I have in my 12-week program, everything I do with coaching clients and my students is dedicated to helping them manage the amygdala, manage the survival response, and put the prefrontal cortex in charge. Why? Because your prefrontal cortex is what is responsible for executive decision making. It's what is responsible for, here is a plan, I'm going to stick to it. It's what's responsible for making rational and objective decisions, which is exactly what you need to be doing as a trader. You have an edge, you have a trading plan, a mechanical trading plan. When the market presents the opportunity, you make a decision. Objectivity is very important because you're seeing a balance between risk and reward, benefit and drawback, which allows you to not be so caught up in the bias, in the confirmation, disconfirmation bias. Because confirmation, disconfirmation bias are going to skew your ability to read the markets properly. So why do we want to quiet down the amygdala? Because the amygdala is what's emotional. It's what's riddled with bias. Why? Because it's necessary for survival, but not necessary for successful trading. Your amygdala is what's responsible for FOMO, overtrading, getting angry when you lose, getting happy when you win. These are all responses of the amygdala. The prefrontal cortex is more objective and rational. It doesn't have emotion. It has what is referred to as feeling, balanced feelings. The prefrontal cortex is what is process-based. The amygdala is what's outcome-based. The amygdala reacts to the external environment where the prefrontal cortex makes decisions based on an internal structure and process. So everything we do as traders when we talk about mastering your trading mindset is about managing and quieting down this, and it's about putting this in charge. And every single one of you would have felt the difference when you're angry and emotional and red hot, your amygdala is in charge. And when you're in flow and when you're present and when things feel effortless, your prefrontal cortex in charge. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. So let's backtrack, let's do a little summary, and then I'm going to share what you can do to actually manage the amygdala and put the prefrontal cortex in charge. So every human being has this response hardwired within them. It was necessary for our survival. When we see a threat, we exaggerate how bad that threat is. This threat could be a saber-toothed tiger, it could be a lion, it could be a person with a knife, it could be a car, it could be a train, it could be a loss in the markets, it could be an angry spouse. the brain is going to register it no matter what it is as a threat, and it's going to have that same response firing. Okay? Dinner, prey could be and another attractive human. It could be a win in the market. It could be a anything that you perceive as positive, that you want to consume, that you want to take in. Okay? Positive, benefit. Anything that you perceive will benefit your life and your goals. It could be some funding. It could be Telos Capital funding. Okay? So this response is hardwired within us. We want to avoid the threat. We want to seek after the dinner, the prey, and our brain is designed to exaggerate how good the dinner is, how bad the threat is, as a way to have kept us alive thousands of years ago. But these life-threatening situations, now within society, when we've developed society and society's developed, these life-threatening situations aren't very imminent necessarily most of the time for most people. Okay? So we have to learn to start transcending this survival response and put ourselves in what is called a thrival response. So we need to learn to start to transcend the amygdala response and put the prefrontal cortex in charge. Now, how do we do that? Let's get into it. So this is what we're going to call a thrival response, or a thrival state of mind. This is what I mean by upgrading your mind for trading success. It's very important. Now, the first thing you can do to upgrade your mind for trading success is, first and foremost, make sure you have certainty in your trading edge. And you actually have a trading edge. Now, in order to be certain in your trading edge, you have to know that a trading edge has both wins and it has losses. It's got benefit and drawback. It's got pain and pleasure. So first and foremost, you have to have a realistic expectation on your edge. You can't be certain that you're going to come to the market and win every time. You can't be certain that you're going to come to the market and lose every time. What you can be certain in is sometimes you're going to win, sometimes you're going to lose. But your edge needs to be structured in a way that you're maximizing wins and you're minimizing losses. And this needs to be put into a process, a mechanical trading plan. The amygdala thrives in a state of uncertainty. When you don't perceive certainty, I should say, rather, when you don't perceive certainty, you activate your amygdala. If you are certain and you have realistic expectations, you're already activating your prefrontal cortex. Whenever you don't have a plan and you're overwhelmed by decisions in the market, and there's a million and one decisions you can make in the market at any point in time. You could buy, you could sell, you could risk this much, you could risk that much, you can risk anything really. There's a million and one decisions you can make in the market at any point in time. That's overwhelming. When you're overwhelmed with decisions in the market, you activate your amygdala, your survival response that keeps you protected from threats. Whereas when you know exactly what you're doing and you got the map to the jungle, you got the metaphorical map to the jungle, you know exactly what you're doing in each scenario of the market, how you're entering, how you're managing your positions, how you're exiting, how much you're risking. When you're certain in each of those components, and guess what? You put the prefrontal cortex in charge. Your prefrontal cortex loves process and structure. Money loves process and structure. It doesn't like emotion. It doesn't like the amygdala. Okay? And then step number 3. When we talk specifically about your mindset, the first thing you can do before every trade is you can manage your expectations on the outcome. I've used the analogy before that the amygdala is like the chimp. Imagine dangling a carrot or a cookie in front of a chimp and then taking that carrot or cookie away, yanking it away from them. they're going to go through this extreme emotion of being very, very happy and excited. And then because they're anchored up here, then extremely disappointed and depressed when that cookie's taken away. And even reactive, angry, right? You've challenged their values. They're furious in that moment. It's no different when we're trading. If we dangle all these expectations of what we think we're going to get from the market, the win, the funded account, the recognition, the new car, all these benefits, and we're dangling these in front of us as an expectation on the outcome of that individual trade, and then the market goes for a loss, now we not only lose the amount of money we risked and the percentage, but we also lose in our mind all these positive expectations. And that's really the painful part of trading. Not necessarily the loss of money if you have proper risk management, or the loss of percentage if you have proper risk management, but really what I've seen through my consulting work, the most painful part of losing in trading is losing the fantasies and expectations that you're imposing in the market in the first place. That's really the painful part of losing, okay, if you have proper risk management. So managing your expectations before every trade and becoming aware of what type of decision you're making in the market. Am I making a decision because of what I think is going to happen next in the market? Or am I making a decision because this is what aligns with my trading plan? Okay. By the way, there's resources in the description to help with all these. I've got my 6-figure trading plan template. It's free. You can download it in the description. I've got the Bulletproof Your Mindset tool, which is another free tool that helps you identify and ground your expectations before every trade, so you're not dangling carrots in front of yourself, and you reduce the emotional volatilities. Guess what? You also reduce confirmation bias, disconfirmation bias, and countless other mental errors in that moment, and you make better decisions. It's the exact tool I give to my 6-figure traders. Make sure you download it and use it. Now, the other thing you can do with your mindset is address the subconsciously stored associations of good and bad, and of winning and losing. Because if in your mind you have all these reactions to losing and all this pain in the past logged about how painful losing is and how negative it is and how much you want to avoid it, then the moment you have an event that resembles, right, let's imagine this is a face, just imagine, and this is your brain, your amygdala, and in the subconscious mind you have all these logged associations of painful experiences of losing, and then you take a loss in the market that resembles and is associated to that, all those previous losses, then guess what happens? You're not only experiencing this painful loss in front of you, but you're reliving all that baggage you've got stored in your subconscious mind. And that's also another very painful part of trading. And then you always have that in the forefront of your mind, so now you're in a state of fear when you're trading, and you're not able to stick to your trading plan. So deep work needs to be done on your subconscious mind to start to upgrade your mind and address a lot of these past associations and belief systems around winning and losing and self-worth and belief systems and all that type of stuff, guilt and shame. All these things need to be addressed, because if you don't, then the market is just going to reflect back onto you, and you're going to have all these emotional responses as a result of your previously stored experiences. Okay? So this is what I talk extensively about in the 12-week program and one-on-one coaching. Okay. Now, those are the two main things. You do this before you trade, managing your expectations, and you do this after you trade. You go in there and you have a look. All right, I've experienced a loss. I'm going to go and address this. I'm going to go and find how this loss served me, and I'm going to start to redefine. Because, let me explain this a little bit deeper. If you experience a win in the markets and after you trade, you take a win and you label that as positive, and you're happy and you're elated and you're all up and about, what's going to happen is you're going to be in a self-exaggerated state, minimizing risk in the market. You're going to feel invincible. You're going to puff yourself up thinking you're better than the market, and you're going to project onto the market your low quality setups. You're going to force your ideas onto the market. It's not difficult to see. The amount of times you go into this winning streak, this feeling of invincibility, and then you start forcing crappy little setups into the market and you go through a losing period. It's what's referred to as the boom and bust cycle. So too, you can take a loss in the market and be in this self-minimized state, so deep in a state of shame and fear, right? And by the way, this is pride and greed. And what can happen is the market may present an opportunity again in the market, but you're too fearful to act because you don't want to relive the pain of that previous loss. So in both states of being elated after a win or depressed after a win, pride or shame, happy and sad, you can put any of the two emotions, they're just different degrees of the two emotions. You're not going to stick to your trading plan. If you're sad or fearful or shamed or self-minimizing, you're not going to stick to your trading plan because you're going to have fear running your trading. You're not going to execute when the market presents an opportunity. Or if you're happy, elated, winning, self-exaggerating, you're not going to stick to your trading plan because you're going to be minimizing risk in the market. You're going to be forcing ideas onto the market. So as a trader, you need to do preventative work and work before to address a lot of this. But then every time you take a trade, you need to also address and bring yourself back to a state of balance and equilibrium. And recognize, and if you're up here in the clouds thinking about how good you are, you need to humble yourself a little bit. Remind yourself about, the risks or drawbacks or disservices or how you haven't got everything figured out in your life and that you're overlooking things. And you need a way to ground yourself, not to beat yourself up into a state of shame, but to get yourself back to a state of just being you, just being a human, balanced human being. And when you're so far deep in this sad, self-raunchous, beating yourself up state of mind, you need ways to bring yourself back up. Find the benefits. Remind yourself that you're not so bad after all, and you've done a few good things in your life to bring yourself back to this state of being a human and being balanced. And if you know how to do this yourself, then you're not going to go on the boom and bust cycle. The boom and bust cycle is only for traders who don't know how to manage themselves because they're having to get the market to manage them for them. So these are important components to cover when we talk about the mindset. This is all what I cover in the 12-week program and in coaching. Okay? Now, the other thing that's important to put yourself in a thrival state of mind and to ensure that you're upgrading your mind and you're transcending the amygdala and the chimp is step number 4, which is now about structuring your life, especially the 7 areas of life, to ensure that you can consistently come to the market and you can consistently execute in the market with a balanced state of mind. So structuring your life to ensure sticking to your trading plan with a balanced state of mind, with a clear, objective state of mind. Okay? And remember, you've got 7 areas of your life. You've got your trading, and typically trading will probably fall under some form of business or income. So you got your business and income, trading. You've got finance and investments. This is like your personal finance. You've got your family and relationships. Okay, it's important. You've got your mental faculties, and your learning and your studies and your personal development. You've got your health and fitness. You got your social leadership, and you got your spiritual mission. Doesn't have to be anything religious, doesn't have to be anything like that. It's just whatever's most important to you. It's the mission you're on. Your social leadership refers to the impact you want to have on other people's lives. You can do something a little bit more global, like doing a YouTube, whatever it may be. That's my form of it. Or you can do something a little bit different, like just looking after and inspiring. I've had many clients who say, I don't want to do anything that's out there, but they would love to inspire their kids. They would love to teach their kids and mentor their kids. Great, that's a form of social leadership. So you have 7 areas to your life, 2, 4, 6, 7. Now, any of the areas that you're not focused on and empowered in, you're going to have volatilities and challenges in, and they're most likely going to affect your trading performance. For example, if you don't have your finances taken care of and you don't have savings or a proper financial structure and you need to make money, you're going to be desperate for money, you're going to go into outcome-based thinking and you're going to be forcing ideas in the market out of desperation to make money, and it's going to impact your trading performance. If you've got a foggy mind and you're sick, you can't focus and your health isn't empowered and you struggle to sit for periods of time to concentrate, you're not going to be able to trade successfully. If you're having arguments in your family and relationships and there's challenges there, you're not going to be able to trade effectively. If your mental faculties, if you haven't learned and studied and you're disempowered and you're going to be going down into more get-rich-quick schemes and gambling and that type of stuff, you're not going to be able to trade successfully, etc., etc. And if you're not inspired by what you do, you don't have a feeling of inspiration, you're not going to be able to sustain your trading either. So that's where those two components fall in. So any of the 7 areas that you aren't empowered in, or you're not working on, or you don't perceive yourself in being empowered in, is ultimately going to affect your trading. So it's important to have a calendar and a life structure where first and foremost you put your trading tasks in, for example, forecasting, trading, execution, review, etc., back testing, developing your trading plan. You structure those into a calendar, and then you also set goals in the other areas of life for your 9 to 5 or part-time work, for other businesses, for family time, for personal development time, for gym time, right? And you focus on setting goals and empowering yourself in the other areas, and then you structure all that into a calendar. So now you've got your trading, you've got time for your trading, but you've also got time to empower the other areas of life as well. And you're going off and you're holistically building your life structure. Now, some of you won't do all of it at the same time. Some of you will hyper-focus on one, get that done, move on to the next. There's no right or wrong way to do it. You do what you feel right to do. But I just want to make note that it's important to consider all areas. Because if you're not empowered in an area, you're most likely going to get overpowered by someone else, and there's going to be volatilities in that area. Just something to consider. Okay? But what's most important here is that now you've structured your trading tasks and trading time into a calendar, so you show up and get it done every single day. And then it becomes about relentlessly pursuing these high priority actions. And that's what it's all about now. Okay? So when we talk, and by the way, the more empowered you perceive yourself in the areas of life, I mentioned this at the start, the more you're going to wire the prefrontal cortex and quiet down the amygdala, because you're going to have less stress and volatilities in your life, which is going to be, your amygdala is going to be less needed. And your brain will literally reallocate resources from the amygdala to the prefrontal cortex. And you'll feel more inspired, you'll show up, you'll get stuff done every day. And then when you start to generate more and more income, you start to delegate more and build out a team, and then you get rid of things that you're not inspired to do in your day and you just focus on the highest priority thing. Okay? So something to think about. But when we talk about upgrading your brain, it's firstly about recognizing that your brain has been developed and designed and over evolution been designed to keep you alive. We have to learn to quiet down those survival responses. And don't worry, if they're ever needed in your life, they will be there. But when you're trading at your desk, you need to have these mindset tools and these mindset principles to guide you to ensure that in that moment you've quieted down your amygdala and you're making rational decisions in alignment with your trading plan. Okay? Hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully that was insightful. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments below. Check out the resources in the description. And if you like this video, please like, comment, and subscribe. and share this video with all your trading friends. And thank you for sticking around to the end. Thank you. We've hit 15,000 subscribers, so thank you for everybody supporting the channel. It means the world to me, and I'll see you all in the next video.